Sorry, let me say that again. So whenever I say the name of a president, make sure you are telling me what they are most famous for, what kind of policies they are involved with, and why they are important to know. Starting with my boy, George Washington. What is important about George Washington? Eddie Allen.
Well, was he he was a military general?
He was military general. Which president was he?
The first one?
The first one, yes, that's really important. What is he like most famous for? Anybody jump in? Erica.
His farewell address.
And what does his farewell address say?
He told everybody to stay away from politics and foreign affairs.
Beautiful.
Can I jump in?
Sorry, what was that, Cedric?
Can I jump in?
Yes.
So he's most famous for the $1 bill.
Yes, George Washington is on the dollar bill. Yes. Okay, let's jump down just a little bit to his original Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson. What is most notable about Thomas Jefferson's presidency? Yamani.
Didn't he write the Declaration of Independence?
Mm-hmm. He did do that. What is he buy during his presidency? What's his most famous purchase?
Louisiana Purchase.
Beautiful. And what does the Louisiana Purchase do?
Gave us Louisiana.
It buys us Louisiana and all that territory. Go ahead and jump in, Madison.
Well, doesn't it double the size of the USA? But doesn't it also lead to a lot of controversy because people think that he went over his power and he didn't have the right to buy it?
Exactly. That is something we are going to talk about more when you guys are in AP government. It does expand the role of the presidency, which he claimed to be against. I'm just saying. Okay, great. Let's jump on down. What is James Monroe most famous for? James Monroe. Tisa. James Monroe.
He was most famous for the foreign policy.
Yes, and what is that called? What is his foreign policy called?
Monroe Doctrine.
Monroe. Yes, the Monroe Doctrine. Somebody jump in. Tell me what the Monroe Doctrine is.
The Monroe Doctrine restricted any Europeans from entering the Western Hemisphere.
Beautiful. Great. Let's skip forward a lot. Mr. Lincoln. What is so important about Abraham Lincoln? Janiyah.
He was the 16th president.
What conflict was he the president during?
The Civil War.
Great. Build on our understanding of Lincoln, Ariana.
He also passed the Emancipation Proclamation, which was to free slaves and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Let's backpedal a little bit because I guess it is his birthday. What is most important about Andrew Jackson Malachi? Since you've had to let me know.
Isn't Andrew Jackson I forgot which exact president he was.
It doesn't matter what number he was.
Okay. Well then.
What are some of his controversies?
I can't remember right now.
Okay, that's fine. Jump in, Erica.
I'm thinking this was him. Didn't he overturn the Supreme Court saying that Indians could live wherever they wanted and then kick them out and made them go through the Trail of Tears?
That is exactly what he did. And who remembers the name of this policy where he kicks Native Americans out and forces them to move?
Indian Removal Act.
Yes, the Indian Removal Act. Beautiful. Cedric, did you have anything to add on Andrew Jackson?
Wasn't he the one that established a sense of nationalism, right?
Yes, so he does create a sense of American nationalism. Who remembers what political party he's a part of?
Republican.
Democrat.
Democratic.
Democrats. Beautiful. Yes. Well, not beautiful. This is when Democrats suck. Sorry. Yes, he is a Democrat. Going away from his Native American policy, what other important policy does Andrew Jackson overturn? What does he try to mess with?
Is it the Bank of the U.S.?
Yes, it is the Bank of the United States. He tries to destroy the Bank of the United States. Great. Let's jump forward a little bit. What is important about my boy Ulysses S. Grant, President Grant? Janiqua.
He was a general in the Union Army, right? And what else did he do? Oh, he pushed for what did he push for? Pushed for civil rights. Like he was a big supporter of getting rights for former slaves and all that type of stuff.
Exactly. Cedric, did you have anything to add?
No, never mind. Johnny already said it.
Okay. If you guys can do me a favor, whenever you raise your hand, if you change your mind, if you can just unraise your hand so that way I know if you've said anything. I'm just trying to text our friends that are not here yet. Great, let's keep going. So, Mr. Grant was a wonderful president during Reconstruction and really pushed for radical Reconstruction in the South. Let's skip forward a lot. What about Teddy Roosevelt? What's important about Teddy Roosevelt, ISIS?
Oh man. Give me 1 second. Wait, didn't he? No, I don't think that was him. I know it was him. Didn't he do the New Deal and then the second New Deal during like the Great Depression?
That's a different Roosevelt.
Alrighty.
That's Franklin Roosevelt. Jump in, Tisa.
Didn't he do the progressive movement, which was like the square deal?
Yes, he has the square deal. What other moments from the progressive movement was he involved in? Nyasia and then Cedric.
He was a conservationist and he created the Roosevelt Corollary. That thing.
What does the Roosevelt Corollary do? Speaking of George Washington and the Monroe Doctrine.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't that no, that was that the Latin America one?
Mm-hmm.
Was it like the United States? Only U.S. had access to Latin America, and nobody else could get into it or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Go ahead, and I'm gonna go back to you, Isis. What is important about Franklin Roosevelt?
Franklin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I said this one already, right?
Yes.
Okay, so he was president during the Great Depression, and he created the New Deal and the second New Deal. I don't remember what else he created. In order to boost didn't he give federal jobs to people in order to boost income for people to end poverty?
Beautiful. Awesome job, you guys. I'm gonna go ahead. That was a great oral drill. We are just 8 days away from our AP exam. So again, just knowing these terms as well as we can is super important to make sure that we are in a good place. So I'm gonna go and share my screen and show you guys what we are going to be reviewing today. So first, so today is going to be reviewing introductions. So as I have said all this year, the introduction is the place where you can earn 2 points. For this new rubric, it's going to be 2 out of 10 points. And the introduction is composed of your context as well as your thesis, which is super important. So today we're going to go back to basics and make sure we are in a good place for our context and our thesis. First, I'm going to show you guys a really helpful checklist that that we created to make sure when you are done with when you're done writing your DBQ, you can go through and check off to make sure that you did everything that you could. So for our AP History DBQ checklist, we are suggesting that you take about 3 to 5 sentences establishing your context. This is where you're going to introduce the topic, explain the time period or era. So basically what time, so like the Civil War era, the Reconstruction era, the Gilded Age, the Industrialization era, any of those types of terms, whatever's relevant. And then try to come up with at least 3 key terms or relevant pieces of information that show you understand what is the most important about that. And then you are going to just kind of connect the context to this thesis where you say, this is what's going on at the time, and now this is why it's important in terms of answering the prompt, where you are going to write a 1 to 2 sentence thesis statement that is both arguable, it answers all parts of the prompt, and it is directly aligned to either causation, continuity, and change over time, or comparison. So going into today's lesson, I have this written for you. Remember to get 3 to 4 key terms that are relevant to the topic of the essay, and you can fully explain. So make sure that you are able to argue what the connection is between the terms and the topic of the essay. To bring back an issue from last week's DBQ, one of the more frequent errors is that you guys had a good context statement, but you did not get the context point because it was not related to the prompt. So the prompt was about immigration and industrialization, but because the prompt starts in 1865, you just talked about the Civil War ending and that African Americans are now free, but you didn't use any of that information to connect why the Civil War might be important in regards to immigration and industrialization. So that is just an error. So just make sure that we are coming up with our key terms that are related to the prompt. So for an example, if the prompt is asking you about the Great Depression, your context should describe the events that caused it. So if I asked a prompt, if I had a prompt like, the Great Depression caused what extent in foreign domestic policy changes, I would first want to describe the context of the Roaring 20s, rapid consumerism, Republican presidents who deregulated industry. All of those things led to the Great Depression, which is why I can talk about the Great Depression causing all of these domestic changes. So it should bridge your context to the prompt and why it's arguable. So you are now going to transition to your class packet. I am going to set the timer for 10 minutes. I have created a list of 10 different prompt subjects. These are not full essays, but the prompt, let's say the prompt is related to the American Revolution. What are some key terms you would want to come up with that? Let's say the prompt is about the Constitutional Convention. What are 3 context key terms you could use for the Constitutional Convention? So we are going to set the timer for 10 minutes to complete that. Does anybody have any questions about what we are doing for the next 10 minutes? Great, everybody should have their reference sheets available, ready to go, which will help you come up with key terms. You don't need to define the key terms, just come up with the list of key terms. I am setting the timer for 10 minutes. You should be spending about 1 minute per prompt. Go off of memory as much as you can, but use your reference sheets when you need them. 10 minutes is on the clock. I'm grading this packet based off of completion, so make sure you are completing it. 10 minutes, go. You have just under 9 minutes left. You should be on the second prompt. Everybody should be on the fourth prompt. Thomas Jefferson's presidency. 5 minutes. You should be starting the 6th prompt on sectionalism. Three minutes left. You should be getting ready to start the industrialization prompt. Two minutes left. You should be on the last two about the Roaring Twenties and World War II. If you are already finished, now's a good time just to practice writing contextualization statements for any of these prompts. Thirty more seconds. Go ahead and work on finishing up, and then we're going to review this as a group. we are finished up with that. We're now going to review it as a group. So what I'm going to ask that you guys do is you just unmute yourself and share one term that you came up with. So you can unmute and share one term. Wait until I'm ready. Okay, for the American Revolution, what key terms did we come up with?
American
Patriot.
Cedric and then Aisha.
Salutary neglect.
Mm-hmm.
Stand back.
Beautiful. What are some other terms that we have?
Natural rights.
Without representation.
French Revolution.
So the French Revolution.
Enlightenment idea.
Which war with the French is important for the American Revolution?
French and Indian.
Beautiful.
Boston Tea Party.
Mm-hmm.
The Enlightenment idea.
Beautiful.
John Locke.
Mm-hmm.
Declaration of Independence.
Loyalists.
It's loyalists versus who?
Patriots.
So we're gonna go and pause there. I just want to point out that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 key terms that we just brainstormed that you guys just shared out in like 30 seconds. So as long as you are using your resources in the most effective way and you going off of all of the amazing things that you've learned this year, like you're gonna be okay. Okay. Context for, and remember, we're doing context. So like things like the Great Compromise aren't going to count. So the context for Constitutional Convention, Madison.
Well, I said the Shays Rebellion. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
You could say the Articles of Confederation, the weakness of it or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Go for it, Tisa.
Madison took mine.
Okay. Sorry, who else raised their hands? Sorry, that's why I'm going to have you guys share out just because I can't. Go ahead and share that one out loud, Ariana.
The state versus federal.
Yeah, so state versus federal. Now, what are those political parties?
Federalist, anti-federalist.
Can you also use like the revolution, the American Revolution as context?
Absolutely. Any other different ones? Okay, that's fine. So obviously not as many as the American Revolution, but you can absolutely write like 2 to 3 sentences connecting the American Revolution to Shays Rebellion to Articles of Confederation. Absolutely. Westward expansion.
Manifest Destiny.
Indian Removal Act, railroads.
Homestead Act.
Homestead Act.
Andrew Jackson.
Dawes Act.
This is a little early for the Dawes Act.
Trail of Tears.
What was that big old purchase that Thomas Jefferson did that doubled the size of the United States?
Louisiana. I said that already.
Sure.
Sorry,
Right.
I didn't hear it. Believe it or not, there are like 8 of you talking over each
She's lying.
Okay. Anything else that you guys said that I missed?
Monroe Doctrine.
The Monroe Doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine is a good example of, yes, that's from the time period, but it's not directly related to this idea of westward expansion.
Can you say the Lewis and Clark expedition?
Lewis and Clark, beautiful. Dwayne, I think I heard your voice, but I didn't hear what you said.
Indian Removal Act.
Don't know if I said that.
Okay,
Sure you did.
taking credit. Y'all get to chill.
Marshall.
Teamwork. What else? I just thought of one. Oh, what was that other war that America had that like added a lot of land to the United States, and there was all these issues about slavery?
Mexican session, the Mexican American War, that thingy.
Mm-hmm. And what was that name again? Name of that territory again, Naisha?
Mexican session.
Beautiful. Great. Let's use some key terms for, or context terms for Thomas Jefferson, and then we're going to go and pause after this.
Embargo Act.
Mm-hmm.
The Louisiana Purchase.
So these are things that he does. What's some context coming before that?
Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm. Who is the guy that he had that massive rivalry with?
Alexander Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton. His name is Alexander.
Federalists and anti-federalists.
Yes. And what is the political party that he establishes before he runs for president?
Democratic Republican.
Beautiful. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and pause here. If we have time at the end, I will come up and we will do the last 6 or so, but I wanna make sure we get through the rest of the packet before, so we don't hold you guys over. So the next thing that we are going to do is review thesis statements. So one of our biggest gaps when it comes to our thesis statements is we are only answering parts of the prompt, not the prompt entirely. So when you are writing your thesis, you need to make sure it answers the full prompt and that it's historically accurate. You can't just answer a prompt with like history that isn't real. And you need to make an argument with at least 2 clear reasons. So it's whenever we say our thesis of something somewhat changed because X and because Y is usually the way that we would go about it. And it needs to establish that line of reasoning or roadmap for what the rest of the essay is going to look like. So if you have 2 body paragraphs in your essay, you should have the topics of those 2 body paragraphs in your thesis. If you are still having trouble coming up with your thesis, this is a good thesis formula. Although blank happened, ultimately this happened because this happened. Is like a really good model for if you guys just have trouble coming up with it off the top of your head. So I have 3 theses. I still have not figured out the plural for that. From our DBQ from the 3rd quarter IA. There's a high, a medium, and a low, and only the high would get the thesis point from the College Board reader. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want you to take 5 minutes to read through these different theses and understand why only the high would get the point. And so so underneath, I want you to tell me why this would get a point, why this wouldn't get a point, and why this would not get a point. So go ahead and get started. You have 5 minutes to do that. I'm going to cold call you when we come back. 5 minutes is on the clock now.
Miss Wild.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't want to type it because it's going to take too long. But you know how in Google Classroom you said the first one gets the point?
Mm-hmm.
But you know how they said somewhat change? All they explained was what didn't, like it said little progress for African Americans. They didn't explain what was good.
Here, I'll chat you.
Okay.
Two more minutes. $45 seconds. Great, we are all done. I'm just gonna quickly jump through because we only have a few more minutes of class. So why, I'll take a hand. Why would the first thesis, the high, get the point? Nobody wants to jump in? Go for it, Serge.
I mentioned that it was very specific,
Mhm.
mentioning the African Americans and their progress through the World War II.
Mm-hmm. Great. So what I think Serge is pointing out is that one, it answers the question, because the question is evaluate the extent of change. So one, they say there were some changes because here is where some of the changes did happen, like minorities fighting for rights. However, we also have other groups that were targeted, so there weren't So they weren't getting as many rights as they necessarily should have. So they show both reasons, like why there were and why there weren't. Now, why did the other two theses not get the points, Naisha?
The median one didn't get the point because thesis isn't defensible since it didn't provide a line of reasoning. And the second one didn't get a point because there was no subclaim to support their argument of somewhat.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely like the issue with the low is that it answers the question, but it doesn't establish a line of reasoning, and it doesn't show, like, it's not historically defensible, as Naisha said. And as for the medium, the other thing I would say is that where it says significantly changed, while the first part is correct, as African Americans and women were given more freedoms, it starts well, but where it drastically changes to in the Japanese were being forced into camps, that's almost too specific, and that doesn't really show like if that's really a change. Like it doesn't have that historically defensible like bucket of like this is where a change happened. Before I release you to your exit ticket, I have a couple of announcements. First, I'm going to take a poll for tomorrow's class. Remember, Fridays are still required in APUSH because, again, we are 8 days away from our exam. I'm going to have you guys vote so I can see what is going to be the most helpful. And remember, you are using just your class time to get this done. So it's no matter what, you're going to be with me for 50 minutes. It is what it is. Raise your hand. Let me give you your two options and then we'll vote. The two options are we do another practice DBQ and you guys get more specific feedback, or we do a content review either through a mini lecture or a Kahoot, one of the two. Raise your hand if you need more time practicing your DBQs. Okay. Raise your hand if you need more help reviewing the content. Okay, thank you guys. That's what I assumed, but I wanted to make sure. Please, please, please come to class tomorrow. I'm going to try to make it fun, and it's still part of the grade. So it's not an optional review. It is going to be a very helpful review. So we will do a content review tomorrow, probably like a little of both a lecture and a Kahoot. We'll see what I can find. So please be in class tomorrow. Cedric and Erica, did you guys have questions or is your hand just raised from earlier?
I have a question about the extra credit.
I'm getting to that next. Okay, so Erica just pointed out that I just created an assignment. It is a practice DBQ for extra credit. It's on one of the time periods that I think we've spent we haven't reviewed as much, which is period 3, the American Revolution and the Constitution. So I tried to pick a time period where I think you guys need the most content review. So that is super. So the DBQ is a practice DBQ that you're going to do over the weekend. It should, again, only be 45 to 50 minutes. Do what you can in that time. And your 2 lowest grades, including zeros or missing work, will be bumped up to a 100 if you complete it. So do the DBQ. It's due Monday night at 8 o'clock. And you will also get more practice writing the DBQ. So the extra credit is great, but you also need as much time practicing as you can. Yes, Erica.
You have a question.
Okay, great. Serge, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I saw your hand still up. Great. That is it for today. Keep both of those things in mind. Be here tomorrow for a very quick content review. We will not have any content review really next week. We won't have much, so tomorrow is going to be really, really helpful. So be here tomorrow. Go and transition to your exit ticket. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And just as a heads up, there's a typo on your exit ticket. It says, do you have more trouble with your context or your introduction? It's supposed to be context or thesis. You are free to go. Make sure you submit your work and have a wonderful rest of your day. Yes, Adarius.
is you still going over the rest of the prompt drawings from earlier?
No, we only went through the first four.
Okay.
Just use your reference sheets if you had trouble with any of them, and you should be good.
All right. Can you put another reference sheet on the Google Classroom?
Okay, what I'm gonna do is I've posted all of those already. I'm gonna move my announcement to the very top of the feed. So if you go to Google Classroom, all of the rubrics, the timelines, and the reference sheets are right there at the top.
Thank you, Ms. White.
No worries. Does anybody else that's still here have questions? Great. Thank you guys for coming. Have a wonderful rest of your day.